You think you know the internet, right? Well, what if I told you there's a whole other side to it? A hidden, anonymous world where empires are built on secrets. And in that digital darkness, one criminal marketplace grew so massive it made its infamous predecessor, the Silk Road, look like a lemonade stand. This is the story of its incredible rise and its spectacular fall.
Yeah, whenever we talk about dark web markets, one name always pops up: Silk Road. It was the OG, the one that made all the headlines. But honestly, that was just the beginning. The platform that came out of its ashes, well, it was a completely different animal. And this chart right here just says it all. I mean, look at this. On the left, you've got Silk Road, about 14,000 listings when they shut it down. And on the right, that's AlphaBay, over 369,000 listings. It wasn't just bigger, it was on an entirely different planet. We're talking more than 25 times the size. So, how on earth did this happen? Well, when law enforcement took down Silk Road and then its successor a year later, it created this massive power vacuum. It was chaos. And that chaos, it was the perfect breeding ground for someone new and way more ambitious to step in and take over the entire scene.
And that new player was AlphaBay. It launched late in 2014, and its growth was just explosive. We're talking 14,000 new users in the first 90 days alone. In less than a single year, it had blown past every competitor to become the undisputed king of the dark web.
So let's talk about just how big this anonymous empire really was. Because the numbers, they're genuinely hard to wrap your head around. This wasn't just some website, this was a full-blown global criminal enterprise operating completely in the shadows. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is straight from the FBI. At its peak, AlphaBay had over 400,000 users, 40,000 different sellers. And look at this, it processed over $1 billion in illegal deals using crypto. $1 billion. And to put that into perspective, by early 2017, the site was churning through up to 600,000 euros. That's about 800,000 US dollars every single day. That is a massive, decentralized engine for crime. So what was on the menu? Well, it was pretty much a criminal's one-stop shop. You had 250,000 listings for illegal drugs, including incredibly dangerous stuff like fentanyl. Over 100,000 listings for stolen IDs, hacking tools, even firearms. If it was illegal, chances are you could find it on AlphaBay. Now, a huge part of what fueled this growth was a really smart tech decision. You see, while Bitcoin feels anonymous, its transactions can actually be traced if you have the resources. So in 2016, AlphaBay adopted Monero. It's a privacy coin that makes transactions almost completely untraceable. This gave its users a whole new level of confidence and security. Okay, so at the very top of this massive criminal empire sat this one shadowy figure, known only by his online handle. But who was he? Well, the man behind the curtain. His real life was a shocking contrast to his dark digital one. Yeah, the architect of this whole thing wasn't some hardened mob boss you'd see in the movies. Nope, it was Alexandre Cazes, a 25-year-old Canadian kid with a real talent for computers, living this life of insane luxury out in Thailand. And this is where the arrogance, the hubris, really kicks in. While his entire empire was built on anonymity, Cazes himself was living a very public, very flashy lifestyle. He was literally posting videos online of himself driving his Lamborghinis and Porsches, creating a digital trail of breadcrumbs that led investigators right to his front door. Now, an empire this big, it's going to attract some serious attention. But you know what? It wasn't some brilliant hack that brought AlphaBay down. Not at all. It was a series of stunningly simple, almost amateur mistakes made by Cazes himself. And the mistakes he made were just shocking. First off, when AlphaBay started, the welcome emails sent to new users, they came from his personal Hotmail address, pimpalex91@hotmail.com. I'm not kidding. He also reused his old alias, Alpha02, which he'd been using on forums for years. But the final nails in the coffin? When the police raided his home, he was logged into the site as the administrator on a laptop that was completely unencrypted. You just can't make this stuff up. So with digital breadcrumbs that obvious, a massive internationally coordinated sting was set in motion. They called it Operation Bayonet. We're talking law enforcement from the US, Canada, Thailand, all over Europe, all working together to land the final blow. And the end came fast. On July 5th, 2017, Cazes was arrested in Thailand. Exactly 1 week later, he was found dead in his jail cell. By July 20th, authorities were holding a press conference, officially announcing that AlphaBay, the largest darknet market in history, was gone for good. But the story doesn't stop there, because law enforcement had this incredibly clever trick up their sleeve. At the same time they were going after AlphaBay, Dutch police had secretly taken control of the third largest market, a site called Hansa, and they just kept it running like a honeypot, waiting for all the panicked AlphaBay users to come flooding in. And did it work? Oh, you better believe it. As soon as AlphaBay vanished, traffic to the police-controlled Hansa site spiked by 8 times. Thousands of criminals, thinking they'd found a new safe haven, rushed over and handed their usernames, passwords, and IP addresses directly to the cops. It was brilliant. So the takedown was this huge victory for law enforcement, no doubt about it. But it raised a much bigger question. In this sprawling, decentralized world of the dark web, does shutting down one market really make a difference in the long run? A lot of people call this the whack-a-mole problem. You smash one big site and all the users and sellers just scatter to the next one in line, or to dozens of smaller sites. The criminal network, it just adapts and regrows. And believe it or not, the story still doesn't end there. In 2021, a former admin calling himself D-Snake actually relaunched AlphaBay, promising way tighter security. But the comeback was short-lived. By early 2023, the market just went dark, and D-Snake, well, he vanished without a trace.
Which leaves us with this one final thought. The story of AlphaBay proves that even the biggest digital empires can come crashing down. But it also shows just how resilient this underground ecosystem is. It really raises the ultimate question in the fight against cybercrime. When you cut off one head of the Hydra, are you actually killing the beast? Or are you just making space for new heads to grow right back in its place?